Ashish, did we lose you?
Yeah, I am back.
Did we? Okay, okay.
Yeah, means there is some issue with my internet connection, but hopefully it should not create a lot of trouble.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's completely fine.
No worries. All right, so we will get started with the things. We will discuss what the topics are, and then obviously, if you have any questions, feel free to send information in the chat. We are monitoring and will respond back. And thank you for joining from Singapore. It's probably a very odd time zone, and I appreciate you taking time to be here with us. So, what we plan to do today, we want to talk about some different assorted topic and give you the heads up for the next thing what you should start with. So, we'll start with behavioral track, and Fasad would talk about, hey, I attended this session. I completed some of the certification probably, and maybe I have learned a lot of things. What next? There's no hiring happening, how I keep myself motivated, what can I do to engage myself into these things. So let's hear from Prasad. That would be first thing, and then we'll take a break. And then somebody requested to me like, hey, what type of resources I use for presentation, so I'll talk about that. And then there were some technical topics, IAM, transit gateway, and then transfer family services. So we will talk about those also as we move forward. So I hand it over to you, Prasad. We will get started whenever you are ready.
Thanks, Ashish. Hello, everyone. Yeah. So last week, like I was having a chat with a BeSA participant, and the participant said, okay, BeSA done. What's next? And we discussed about that a bit. And with the hiring freeze, I understand this is a more difficult time for everyone. People have been preparing for the cloud jobs, and right now the industry is uh, is a bit of a probably hiring is not happening at the pace that it was happening around 3 to 4 months ago, right? So it's difficult to keep yourself motivated and keep the learning at the same pace. But believe me, cloud is still growing. All the cloud companies, all the customers are adopting cloud, all the cloud providers are still growing, so there will be jobs. That's what my hunch is, that within next 2 3 months we should be seeing again a lot of hiring, and the best thing that we can do right now is to be prepared for that time, right? And that is keep upskilling. Do not stop your learning at all. So if and one question that comes up a lot is that look, okay, we have done certifications, we have done these BESA sessions, or we have taken some course from Udemy, whether it is a cloud guru, or like Stephen Marek or Edwin Cartlet, it's like we have taken courses, or done some certifications, but how to get real life experience and how to be prepared for the jobs. Ashish, if you want to pull up that slide, there was a great question from one of the BESA participants, right? Let me add that to the stream. Yeah. So the question was that how to create a resume for cloud computing roles based on a job that has been posted on the job searching website or company website. Now, obviously, every company would be having their own requirements, but it's always, and I understand that, if you're in a role, even if you're from IT background, or you're doing some programming or doing some infrastructure job, but not specifically to cloud, then how can you show in your resume that you have cloud experience? The best way is to do a lot of hands-on experience, and then accordingly show in your resume that you have done these workshops. Create your own portfolio, right? And using that portfolio, you will be able to kind of showcase your uh, hands-on experience. So what I have done is that I have kind of we all know that we have eight workshops or AWS as a website where you can do a lot of hands-ons, right? But what I've done is that I've created a list of almost 25 workshops that should be helping you. So let me try and share my screen, and I'll walk you through a few of the workshops. And what I'll do is that I'll walk you through workshops for everyone, the persons who are beginners or intermediate level or the advanced level. So that irrespective of which learning stage you are in or what experience you have, you will be able to pick a few workshops for yourself and do hands-on experiences. And I also try and talk about how you should be projecting these in your resumes, right? So let me try and share my screen. Hold on. Okay, share screen. And okay, cool. Yeah. So eh, I'm sure everyone would be knowing about this, but in case if you have not heard this yet, workshops.aws is a website which has a lot of workshops, like more than 100 workshops, and it's growing. We keep on adding the list. Even the workshops that are done at reInvent, we try and make them, like public. We need to do few things there, like ensuring that the people are able to access those workshops from their own account. So every workshop that is there listed here are can be done via like a AWS hosted event, where we provide the accounts and it's a customer event or a partner event that we do, or individuals can do it in their own accounts, right? And it is created all by experts at AWS, like solutions architects, trainers, architects, like all those people who are actually have some experience in this field and are with AWS creating these workshops. So let's see, like, and if you're a beginning your like workshop, and even if you're like, let's say, a cloud practitioner certification or solutions architect, but you want to start your hands-ons, right? So I generally ask everyone to start here: general immersion day. So this is one of the like best I would say workshop to get started with the basics. It's a level 200. Okay, if anyone who is not aware of the levels, how we do at AWS is that we have four levels: level 100, 200, 300, 400. Level 100 is introductory, and level 400 is for experts. So level 200 is a bit better, and like 300 is technical, and 400 is like for experts. So for everyone who is looking for like cloud jobs, should be able to achieve up till almost 400, but if not, then 200, 300 should be absolutely they should be doing. So this is mainly for the beginners, I would say, right? If you're getting started, and if let's see what all does it helps you, this general immersion day. It's a mix of service explanations, right, and hands-on labs, and it is divided into basic and advanced
Can I ask
modules.
a question here?
Please, please.
So can you give an idea like what is a immersion day? So what is the context of this? Why customers would use immersion day and how it helps you as a learning? So just let us know what is immersion day.
Ashish, you're a better person for that. You are trained. Go ahead.
Okay, so the idea of immersion day is like, hey, we have customer who are interested to get started, but obviously they may not know everything and they need little hand holding to get started initially. So idea of immersion day is that solution architect or professional service engineer, mostly SAs, they would run this immersion day, have people from technical team of customer join in, and they would be playing around with in a controlled fashion. They would be provisioned some account, there would be activities to follow, and then an outcome to discuss at the end, that hey, what we have learned. So people would choose immersion day based on their business need, like a data analytics business immersion day, or maybe a machine learning immersion day, or something else. So this is a activity which we do as a solution architect on a regular basis with customers, but we do not restrict it to only that. The components are made available to anyone in the public, so if you want to run it on your own, you could, no issues on that. All the cloud formation template will be there, so you should be able to use these things. One word of caution is that you would need an account here if you are doing this workshops, right? When you are part of a immersion day, actually that time a provisioned account is given to you, but if you are doing it individually, then you would need an AWS account. And if it's your account, your credit card on the line, be aware about the cost. So please remove things once you are done. Better to note down what you have, or maybe like remove that all the resources, select one region only, note down what you're doing and clean it up afterward, so you don't end up paying a lot of money on that, right? So that's a little bit of immersion day. And now over to you, Prasad.
Oh, thanks for that. So yeah, as Ashish mentioned, immersion days that we run with our customers and even our partners, and a lot of our partners run it for their customers, and but it is open for everyone to run it on their own. All right. Uh, and yes, cleaning. If you're doing it on your own account, and I'll show that in a moment, it is very important to clean it up. Otherwise, you will be incurring costs. Right. So this particular immersion day helps you actually with all the AWS foundational services, and in the advanced module, it will be creating a 3-tier web architecture. So when I go to next, it asks you that start with an AWS account, that is you are doing with your own account, or start with AWS Event Engine. Event Engine is when like we as solutions architect run with our customers, we provide them a provisioned event. So when you are doing it, you do with a start with an AWS account, and it will give you step by step to how to set up your AWS account so that you can start using this particular immersion day. So that's on the basic one, right? And then we have the basic, and then we have the advanced modules, and then this is the section cleanup resource. Never forget to do this, right? So that you are able to ensure that you're not incurring any costs. That's the first one. Now let's talk about the core modules that we have at AWS. The core services like databases, networking, storage, compute, right? So we do have immersion days for each of them. So core service is something that you should be aware of, and having good experience in hands-on. And a lot of people ask generally about networking, right? And networking is something that is very heavily tested even in your solutions architect associate certification. Like, one thing that you should be knowing by heart is how to create a VPC from scratch, right? Like, difference between subnets and NACL, all of that. And for that, we do have our immersion day for networking too, if I'm not wrong. AWS networking workshop. That's here. Yeah, so here it is. This is a 300 level. Now, as you see, like, we are getting bit deeper into each of the core services. So general immersion day was helpful to give you a good overview, and now we are going to dive deep into each of it. Networking workshop. So let's see here. Now again, we have AWS networking immersion day, and this has 4 workshops. Now, depending upon what stage of your learnings are, you're a beginner, you're an intermediate, or you are advanced, you will be able to do accordingly the workshop. If you're starting your journey, start from here. But let's say if you think that you know the basic concepts, then go here. Cool. Similarly, for databases also we have generally there are a couple of ones which are databases, but I have my own favorites, and which is this one. So I'll in fact tell 2 of them. In fact, let me go ahead and press this so that you can see all 4 of them. Yeah, these 3 are there. There was one more, database migration. Why it is not showing up? No. Yeah, here it is. So, but let always start with this. And again, I'm saying, this is like, purpose-built database level 400 means that we are diving really deep into the databases, right? Start here. And I always say this, like, gone are the days when we used to use relational database for every use case, right? Initially, what used to happen, for every application, we used to use SQL Server or MySQL or PostgreSQL, the relational database, or Oracle, right? And now it only depends upon what's the use case is, what the application is, which purpose-built database is actually useful for your specific use case, and then accordingly you should be choosing the database. For that, you should be knowing about like the different kinds of databases, like key value pairs and other databases. So this is a good workshop to get started with, like DynamoDB and Amazon Aurora and stuff, and even the caching. So give it a go. There's a lot to learn from this particular workshop. But as I said, this is an advanced level workshop in databases. There is another one, database migration workshop. So if you have a legacy workloads, like databases in your own environment, and you want to migrate them, this particular database migration workshops goes in deep into like how you can migrate your existing database to AWS. It talks about the tools like schema conversion tool, database management service, database migration service, and other tools. So again, we can go and I can show you quickly. So it's like, it has modules like you want to do for micro SQL Server to Amazon Aurora, SQL Server to Postgres, SQL Server to RDS for SQL Server, and then similarly for oracles. And then once you do it, advanced schema conversions, how you can do the complex scenarios or monitoring the migrations, that if there's a large migrations, let's say 100 terabytes data, you are migrating from one to other. Or there's a feature called CDC, a change data capture, which helps you to actually keep 2 databases, your on-prem database and your cloud database, in sync, so that you can do the cutover seamlessly without any downtime. So all those kinds of things you will be able to learn. But even this workshop is really interesting. Databases for developers workshop. So there are a lot of developers, and like if you want to just migrate your database, this workshop is really good. So you will be migrating, optimizing a monolithic application backed by monolithic MySQL database. And it has three modules, like, migrate. First, you will be actually migrating your MySQL to Aurora database. Then you will be optimizing it. That once you're migrated, how you would be optimizing the whole database along with the queries and everything. And then you will be modernizing it by using other, like functionalities like OpenSearch, Elastic Cache, DynamoDB, step functions. So it's quite a good workshop. So that's for the databases. Now let's go to storage. This is the AWS storage workshop. Again, a 300 level workshop, and this gives you a good overview about all the AWS, like storage services, and with the best practices and everything. So depending upon what your interest is, like you can dive deep into these. All right. And now, for your resume, now when you do these workshops, obviously you can, simply writing that, I've done these immersion days might not be, it'll still catch the attention, but might not be very helpful. So you might have to think about how you can use these to, create some good uh, taglines, right? And that will be helpful if you are able to do that. For example, let's say you did a database migration service, and you have migrated a MySQL database from on-prem to AWS using this workshop. Then you can, instead of saying that I have done database immersion day workshop, you can say that, I can migrate MySQL or SQL Server from on-prem to here with the tools like data, DMS and SCT. So show your experience, right? Uh, that's the way it will help you. In terms of compute, we have a lot of workshops, frankly. But one thing that I really like is EC2 Spot workshops. So now, Ashish already talked in a lot of technical trainings what the spot instances, like, it helps you to reduce your cost, and you're able to use the spare capacity that AWS has. All right. So now EC2 workshops is actually, if you read here, it's a collection of workshops covering best practices to optimize costs and building resilient application with spot instances. Now, each workshop is going to take 90 minutes to complete. Now, it's a collection of workshops, right? And you're able to do multiple things with it. Now, if you're able to do this workshop and then you are able to say in your resume that you are skilled to reduce your cloud costs by 50% using the spot instances, or you are skilled in optimally using spot instances to reduce the whole cost, that is what is going to catch the, uh, uh, hiring manager or the recruiters, attention. On that, when we're talking about cost, it's very important topic, cost management. So we have this workshop, which is continuous cost and sustainability optimization. Now, migration is one thing, right? But once you're there, all you must have heard, regular articles about, the how the cloud cost spirals if you're not optimizing it well. Now, this workshop is going to help you realignment that, all right? And then you should be able to write that in your resume well, that along, I'm not just saying that, doing one workshop is going to make you expert, but then you will be able to research more, you will be able to read more, you will be able to, read few white papers on how the cloud cost managements can be done. And then having a hands-on workshops will give you a good combination about the knowledge and the hands-on, so that you are able to represent that in your workshop and, claim that, that you are adept at this particular specific, thing. So Yeah, I like this workshop, and all of these workshops, as I say, you can either get started as a AWS hosted, or you can do it in your own account. You know, and again, whenever you are starting, always ensure that like a lot of people who reached out to me who are doing this workshop is that, like, I do not have a AWS hosted workshop. That's okay. You do not need to follow this particular page. This is only if you are, like, doing hosted. Otherwise, just skip this and go to the one, and you'll be able to do it in your own accounts. But as I say, always remember to clean up. Otherwise, you will see, and always use the budgets, or like, way to ensure that you get alerts, that if the cost is happening, and as soon as you get alert, you will be able to understand that, okay, I have not deprovisioned. So it's better to do proactively, but also it's better to go have what do you call, alerts, in case if you forget. Okay, let me see how many we have covered. Any questions? Let me, Ashish, are there any questions? I'm not able to monitor the chat. Okay, the workshops at AWS is here. Someone asks, here is the link, Pavan, and you'll be able to get all these workshops from here itself in the search bar. Just search here for whichever, like, keyword that you would like, and you'll be able to get all these workshops. Let me see now. How to. Okay, it seems like Ashish already responded to all of the other questions, so that is good enough. Cool. Let me go ahead and talk about a few other workshops. Yeah, other things, like, that you should be knowing apart from the basic core modules about, like, your compute, storage, database, networking, and all, and the cost optimization, is about automation. And there are two things in terms of automation. One is infrastructure automation, so you should be always knowing about the cloud formation. So we have this one. Let me press this, and yeah, both of these. If you're starting out, so this is a good one. AWS Cloud Formation 101. You should be able to, like, know how to code your infrastructure, right? So this is a good workshop to get your hands on. So once you have good, like, understanding about how you can do things through your AWS Management Console, switch to CloudFormation and try and do all of that through the scripts, through the code. And AWS CloudFormation is going to help you really with that, right? So, and again, it's like, it has basic, intermediate, advanced. So depending upon what level you are, you should be able to do accordingly that. And this is going to really help you even in your resumes, and even when you talk to, interviews, when you say that, like, you can automate the infrastructure. And the other part, so I said, there are two parts to automation. One is infrastructure, and one is, like, deployments. I'll talk about deployment in a moment. uh, but for more workshops about infrastructure itself, is this: build your infrastructure using AWS Cloud Formation and the AWS CDK. Now, CDK is interesting. Cloud Formation, as I said, like, it's more about, like, scripting. But CDK is, you can use actually your programming languages, whether it is, like, your like, I am a .NET person, so I use C#, but you can use your TypeScript, or there are, multiple languages that are supported in AWS CDK that you should be able to use. So start with that, right? So what CDK does is that behind the scenes, it's going to produce a cloud formation template itself. But this helps developers to write the infrastructure code in their own favorite language, right? Now, how does that is helpful? So, like, I have seen a cloud formation templates can become really lengthy, and CDK, like, using your favorite programming language, it actually structures your code a lot. Give a very simple example, let's say you need to spin up 5, like, EC2 instances or something like that. You should, in the CDK, you should be able to use use a for loop, right? But here in a scripting language like in JSON, you'll not be able to do that, or YAML, you'll not be able to do that. You'll have to write 5 times. Here you'll just use a for loop. Just a very small example. So yeah, CDK is great. And then there is another workshop, if I'm not wrong, for CDK, which is advanced CDK, which is extended. There should be an advanced, yes, advanced CDK workshop. Now, once you're familiar with the basics of CDK, go ahead with advanced CDK workshop, and then it should be helping you to, becoming an expert user of CDK. Or there is another one, extended CDK workshop, which is also good if you want to move it gradually. Cool. And then the second thing about the automation is about the deployment. And for that, we should be having a code family, sorry, a code family introduction. So introduction workshop to AWS code family. So AWS code family is like, there are multiple, like code commit, code build, code deploy, and code pipeline, which helps you to actually uh, have your DevOps pipeline set up in AWS. So this is will going to help you again 200 levels. So it's help you to go to get started. And if you have experience with other tools like Jenkins and stuff, then it will be really easy for you. Then you can think about more advanced ones. But if you're not, if you're not done DevOps at all till now, then this is a really good place for you to start. Really good place for you to start. Okay, what else should I be? What? Okay, let's talk about now. Once you're familiar with all of this, now then talks about like, okay, you have workloads running on AWS. Okay, I don't think I've talked about the well architected framework, right? So let me talk about the well architected framework also. Yes, for that there are few workshops for Activate. Yes. So Activate is a AWS program, but like let's focus on the workshops from Activate. So it has two great workshops. One is from your idea to your well-architected product on AWS. But a good thing about each of these workshops is it also shows that time, how much time does it take for you, right? Uh, Approximate time. You know, everyone has their own mileage, so do not worry about if it's taking more time or if you're able to finish in half the time of it, right? It's just an indicative, but it's a good one for you to like if you have an idea then how you can build a well architected product on AWS. And then the next would be that, okay, you created, and how you can scale those architectures effectively. So have a look at even both of these really good workshops for you to like build well architected rooms. We also have a link. I'll try and find that well architected labs, uh, which in itself is a like a multiple labs to help you build well architected uh, architectures on AWS with hands-on labs. But even these are very good to start with. Okay, what next? Anyone who is new to programming and they would like to learn a programming language, then they can always learn TypeScript. It's a good programming language. Python is also great. A lot of people I see learning Python, or you can learn TypeScript. Even for Python, I think we have a workshop. I'll try and find that. But for TypeScript, we have this workshop which helps you get started with TypeScript using AWS services. It's aimed as beginners who have never programmed in TypeScript, right? And it uses similar methods and basics of as other books that you might find, but it'll help you to get started with AWS. So it's quite good way to get started with learning TypeScript. Cool. Feel free to keep browsing through this. You'll be able to just click on all and keep going through all the workshops. You'll be able to find a lot of them. But let me think about any other good workshops that might be helpful. Yes, that is the monitoring. Now, once you have all your workloads in AWS, now it's all about monitoring them and ensuring that you're using the right AWS's tools to running them effectively, right? So I like this one a lot. AWS Cloud Trail monitoring with Amazon CloudWatch. Now, this one is helpful. Now, like when you do these workshops, you'll be able to write them on in your resume. Not only the services that I have, like experience or done hands-on Cloud Trail and CloudWatch, but like you are able to effectively monitor and manage workloads on AWS, and let that intrigue the interviewer and ask them what you mean by that. And then you start talking about how you can do the integration between CloudTrail and CloudWatch, and how you are able to use the CloudWatch in login sites, metric filters, subscription filters, alarms, to actually ensure that everything is running smoothly. And if there is any anomaly, you will be able to detect it. And once you have done these workshops, if there are any questions, you will be able to do it on your, you'll be able to, obviously explain them, because you've done it on your own. There is another workshop on systems manager. Systems manager is really important. Uh, yes, systems manager is like one of the service in AWS through which you will be able to manage your AWS resources a lot. And this workshop helps you with both Amazon CloudWatch and Systems Manager. So think about, like as I say, like AWS is quite vast, and becoming a master of everything would be very time consuming and probably not be possible. But having a high level understanding of almost everything which is required, so that you know how different building blocks works, and then choose in which area you would like to dive deep, right? And then dive deep into that, right? And that's how you'll be able to build your expertise. And all of these workshops are going to be really helpful for you to even get your certifications, so use them as a byproduct, to get your certifications, or vice versa, get certifications and use them to show your experience, whichever way. But really good resources for hands-on, or sharpening your saw, whichever way you would like to see it. Okay, now let's talk about serverless. So there is a workshop getting started with serverless. In case if you want, you must have anyways attended the sessions from James. Yeah, he is the serverless guru, frankly. But in case if you want to get started with the hands-ons, so getting started with serverless is a great workshop. In fact, let me click here, and so that you'll be able to see all of them. But yeah, getting started with serverless, it's a good one to help you with that. But then this is where you'll be actually raising the bar when you'll be doing this. Build secure managed serverless application at scale on AWS, and it's a 300 level. So getting started, as you see, is a 200 level for 2 hours. If you're beginning, start from here. But if you have fair idea, or you have done this workshop and you want to upskill further, this is the workshop that you should be looking for. Build secure and managed serverless applications at scale. Or I think we should be having something in APIs. Like let's say if you want to build serverless APIs. So yeah, here it is. Build your first CRUD API. So, anyone, if you're not aware of CRUD means, create, read, updates, and deletes, right? So you can create, if you're not created APIs, which is really important in these days, you can use these workshops to create your first CRUD API, where you will be creating, reading, updating, and deleting records from your DynamoDB table. Cool. Then another thing that you should be thinking about is CloudFront or local zones. Yeah, I think we should be having something for local zones. Yes, here it is. Using local zones for latency sensitive applications. Now, let's say if you have an application, right, and that is distributed, but your application needs to be is really latency sensitive, then how you can leverage local zones to distribute your application, right? And now, if you're able to do this, and this is where you can actually differentiate yourself in your resume, saying that you can work on latency sensitive, or you're able to optimize your applications. For like really low latency, right? Cool. Uh, Let me see if there are any questions. Hold on. Let us switch screen. Okay, Ashish did paste will account labs.
Yeah, means I would like to share few more resources. So if
Yeah,
you allow me, I would be happy to
please.
share that too. Give me a minute. Now, these are not very complicated one, but they are easy ones. And one of the thing which Prasad shared, let me share screen in a minute, and I'll get started from there. So one is well architected labs, and here this is very nice one because it talks about all the things as a solution architect you have to take care into consideration, right? So like security and then optimization of cost and operation excellence. So these workshops are really nice. These are labs. Again, there would be a lot of documentation, and you should be able to pick up things from there. So check these well architected labs. I'll put this link into chat so that you could keep a hands on here. Now the challenge is Parna is asking question, is there a catalog of easily search for these workshop? Workshop.aws is the place, but again the resources are pretty scattered around because there are multiple team working and multiple team creating resources. So that can be little scattered around resources. And that's why we keep on sharing on, and we will put these links on our resources page. So probably we would try to consolidate as much as we know, and then we can get started from there. Now, another one, let me bring up that here is your projects. Now, this project is also a nice way to get started, which is getting hands-on experience on that. So these are tutorial and they are similar to workshop, but they may be very focused on a specific thing like a service or something like create a serverless workflow, just 10 minutes tutorial. And once you go inside, it would talk about all the things. And again, here also you have option to select your 100, 200, 300, what type of content you are looking, video or getting started guides or a container or a compute. So here you could do again filtering. So let's say I want to build a full stack React application. So it is a 50-minute task and it would walk me through the whole process of it, plus giving me all the things which is expected. And most of these will also have that, hey, once you are done, what you should be doing afterward, like cleaning up it, or what are the different modules inside it. So that would also give you some idea. Some of them may be giving you cost to complete option also. Like here you could see that how much would be the cost to complete. This is free tier eligible, so you will not be paying money if you are into free tier. Be aware about free tier. Free tier is counted from the day you create your account up to 1 year. So if you still have crossed that limit, you would still be charged even for free tier resources. So be aware about the cost of it. So it is free tier eligible, but if you're beyond free tier, you would have to pay money in that case. So be aware about these things. Another resource is Quick Labs. Now this is not very not having a lot of free resources, but it has lots of nice resources there, and they give you account to practice if you go with their on demand or their credit kind of option. So here if you could see, like this one, security on AWS, this one is free, so you would not need any credit for that. But if you want, then you can go for further workshop. Like this one is serverless app using DynamoDB. This requires 3 credits, so you could buy credits, or maybe your company may have a tie up with already with someone and they may have credit for you, so you should be able to use these things. If you're Amazon employee, then these credits are there free, so you could use that, should not be a problem at all. Let me share this link also here, that is your Quick Labs, which is for your catalogs. And let me share the last link also, which is getting started on. Another link which I shared before was for partners. So partners are a extended arm for AWS, and obviously we need to have lots of partner related events happening here and there. And the benefit with partners is that those partners may give you some platform credits also. So let me check some partner information. Give me a minute. AWS partner events, and you would be able to see events happening by partner. So these events are a good way. Obviously, they would be pitching in their own products here, but it is a good way to network also. These events are mostly free, virtual, even in person event also. So check if these are happening in your area. Go there, and maybe you will learn about their product, and they may offer you some credit on platform to play around with. So why not? Maybe some networking opportunities and maybe some platform credit which you could end up with. So check these are in-person event, virtual event, in-person event, and you could filter
and
partner based on your requirement. Yeah,
and just to add, like partners are always hiring.
exactly.
So and they're a great way, like these partners are generally, like a few partners would be AWS specific, but most partners would be multi-cloud. So irrespective of what cloud platform you have experience with, there would be openings, because as I said, cloud is growing, these cloud platforms are growing, so all the partners of these cloud platforms are growing.
Exactly. So yeah, means resources are ample. The challenge is like they are scattered around, yeah, because multiple team maintains it. And so feel free. That's why we have created this BeSA group. So if you find there is a good workshop, you have learned a lot from that. Feel free to share that into groups so that everyone would get benefited from it. So or you could let us know and we could put it on our resources page so that multiple people can access it. So just let's make it a collaborative effort for everyone so that we should be able to use these and get more learning. And most resources are free. You do not need to have a lot of money to get started with. Even if you are not willing to like spend money, I would say set aside $25 as a budget for AWS for practicing. I would say you would never consume 25. You would be able to do a lot of things below $25 itself, right? So put a budget, which is I'm talking about AWS budget where you can get alerts. So put a budget alert for $2. If you're spending going $2, I want to get notified, and I would remove those resources. So be little cognizant, and that would give you a cost mindset also, that what can I do to keep the cost minimum? Because as a solution architect, you would always be working to keep your cost low. So why not have that from your mindset from the very first day? So check for those things, and that should help you, right, Prasad?
Yeah, exactly. Like you're touching the right things here. It's very important to be cost conscious. So, and if you build up that habit doing on your own, then you will be doing the same for your customers, right? So you'll be following all the best practices. So, and yeah, ensure that like when you're spinning up any instance, you are spinning up a free tier instance. Like for example, T2 micro EC2 instance is free. If you're going to use a TX large or something like that, it'll not be free, right? So just ensure that
Exactly.
you're using within the free tier one, and then their number of hours or duration. So 750 hours of EC2 instance is free. So if you like spin it up, forget it for a week, you'll be consuming those hours without you actually using it. So, but if you are diligent in that and you're just like terminating those instances, then you will not consuming those 750 hours. You'll be using them judicially when it is required. And
Yeah,
even for
means
your practice, right, why not use spot instances? Even if they are taken away
yeah.
for you, it's and then you will be able to get hands-on on hotspot instances also. So yeah, and do a lot of serverless stuff. It'll keep the cost down and give you hands-on on the latest technologies, right?
Yeah, means the cost is not a huge factor if you're a little cognizant. I would say like you could learn a lot in $25, which is nice enough money to get started. You won't be obviously running Bitcoin mining machine in that, but yes, you could still do a lot of hands-on experience, Lambda, EC2, databases. Don't keep it running unnecessarily. Serverless will always be cheap. Aurora has a serverless option, so you could explore that. Obviously, compute is there, Fargate is there, and a lot of services like, hey, I want to practice on VPC. There is no cost on that. Why not use it? So just go on, have an account, and start running services like VPC, cloud formation. Just learning that. Even if you do not create a resource, go up to the wizard, launch it, and say, hey, I want to launch a SFTP server. Fine. I won't click on finish, but I would see all the steps required inside it. So I would know like, hey, what components are there, why I need to integrate this, why Active Directory is required. So at least go through that wizard. Don't click finish. You would still have a good idea on how things are there and what configuration would be needed on it. So you would be, when you're speaking an interview, you would be confident because you have seen those screens and you have seen all these things. Need to be careful on net gateway billing. Exactly. Pawan, I can relate that. But yeah, yes, you can be. paying a little bit on that. But yeah, if you plan properly, then probably you won't be needing more than $25. And why not $25? We spend money on a nice meal, $20, $30 sometimes. Why not for ourselves to spend $25 and learn as much as we can on that?
Yeah. And as you said, there are a lot of resources, probably, like scattered, but, like stick with one or two resources. Do not, like be overwhelmed with so many resources that
Yeah,
like we are showing. Choose or take time in choosing, but once you choose, go through it end to end. All of these resources are good. All of them are going to give you the same kind of knowledge. So, like just don't get too bogged down on which I should be doing or I should be doing all of them. Just do it.
exactly, exactly. That's a nice tip. Okay, good.
Okay. So we are halfway into
Anything
the
else,
session.
Prasad? Yeah.
That's pretty much, frankly, like, so, is it, what's next? When I say, like from us from BeSA program, we will be launching our, like next batch of BeSA sometime mid Q1. And we will be, like asking a few questions about, like surveys, like what you would like to see or how we could improve on that. But what's for you after BESA is that, like keep learning, keep getting your AWS certifications, and hope that will help you in actually like upskilling, and like moving into the next journey of your cloud career. Like all these workshops is going to get you hands-on experience. Uh, and for any behavioral thing, like please feel free to reach out to us. We do mentor a lot of people 101, so feel free to reach out to us. We will be happy to do that. And once this whole like hiring freeze is over, hopefully there'll be a lot of job openings again in the cloud space, and all of us will be able to get better in our careers.
Exactly. Good. So thank you, Prasad. And what we'll do now, we will take a short break, and afterward we will discuss about the things like presentation, some of the resources I use for building my presentation. It will not be very thorough because it just came off like a one maybe small discussion, and then there were some requests for some technical track. So I'll talk about those tracks, so those specific technical things as we come out of from the break, right? So let's take a 5 minute break, and then we will again discuss interesting stuff. If any questions, any doubt, put them into chat. Once we return, we will try to answer that. Okay. So see you all in 5 minutes. Thank you. All right. I hope everyone can hear me fine. So we will get started and discuss about the topics related to presentations and the resources I use. Now, there was a request which has come up, so let me show that and we'll get started from there. So somebody requested me on LinkedIn that, hey, I use some presentation and how we can get started and use this. So this is no rocket science there, to be honest. Like, I'm just building presentation using common things which I use. So I'll quickly talk about that, and then we'll focus on the technical part. But yeah, if this conversation has any more questions you want to ask or answer, let me know and I would be happy to answer them follow-up questions. Now, there is a question which has come up from Pattern Project is about how to use a specific AWS service. So obviously we can cover, and Prasad can dive deep into that, I guess, because Prasad is obviously doing this conversation with customer, like when to use batch or when to use serverless. So we can talk about that after this session. So hopefully we would have time to cover that too. Okay, so I'll quickly get started. I'll stop camera and then let you focus more on the content, so you would have any problem at all on that. So the two categories I would put for the presentation I build is, first is content building and second is delivering the content on that. Now, for building content, I'm not using like very complicated stuff. I use common stuff which is available. One of them is AWS architecture icons. AWS architecture icons are freely available, so you could get them. Architecture icons, these are available for download. You could get these icons from Amazon. Then if you are using draw.io, it is available there too, and it is available into a PowerPoint format. So you could get these architectures and get started. You could see this PPTX for dark and light background. If you're using Sketch, there is a stencil for Sketch too, and then there's an asset package for different diagramming tool of your choice, PNG and SVG images. So you could use any of these tools which is available for you. So Cloudcraft and then Critly and Glyphy, Draw.io. Draw.io is a very common things I have seen people using it. So you should be able to leverage these icons there also. So this is like freely available icon. Just download this PPT and you can get started on that. So that is one option I use for building my presentation. Second is when I have to get some good graphics, then I use another resource which is called Adobe Stock Images. These are free images, so you could also download these free images. You just need to create an account, and these are like high quality graphics images if you need to. So all these images which I've used mostly are coming from here, and this is not the only site, but I like the graphic quality here and searching capabilities are much better. So I could quickly go ahead and search for, let's say, machine learning, and I would get lots of images on that. Sometimes the image you would get would not be exact what you are looking. So the filtering criteria, as I was saying, are really good here. Sometimes I may be interested to just get an illustration or maybe a vector image so that I could modify it. So like I'm looking for a background, so probably at that time I won't be looking for photos, but I would be looking for illustrations or vectors. And maybe sometime I need to have a orientation, like I want to split the screen with half of the messages here and then half messages here. So we should be able to filter here. Like if we are talking about containers here, I have picked some images here and then I use them to build the slides I use. So this is a nice resource. Search for free. As you could see, you paid is also not very costly, but yeah, you need to pay little money. So premium resources are there. There is some videos also in case you are building content for your video presentation. So you should be able to pick up and get started from there. So that is another tool or a resource which I find very useful to build my presentation on. I prefer to tell story through pictures. Like I cannot learn anything unless it is shown as a picture to me. That is my limitation. So I always try to represent things in a picture format. Another thing I do is like when I'm presenting something, I do not reveal the whole slide in one single shot. Even if a slide has a lot of content, I would prefer to open it one by one. Let's talk about logical concept, then reveal one component, talk about it, reveal another component, and then start linking those content together. So that is a strategy. So if you have to present a very busy slide, see if you can break it down into smaller chunks. And sometimes you do not need to be an animation expert to do that. Let me quickly show that what could be a good way to get started. Give me a minute, I'll get started here. So let's say if I have to animate these things, these all the slides, all the sorry these components which are coming up, so and I do not know how to animate it, let's say because of skills. What I could do, I would copy paste these things again. I copy paste these slides and then I just remove the content. So like see, so this is first slide. Now next slide when it will come, it will automatically feel like it is animated, but actually it is not. And now I could put it into front. Now the second topic would come like this. And here in the third slide, if I want to remove something else, I could remove it. So just delete it, copy paste the slide and delete it, and it will give you impression like you are doing animation. Number of slide would increase, but still it would be a good way to get started rather than saying, so now the slide is like this and then next slide, next slide, next slide, next slide. I did this only for text, but you could do the same thing for any graphical content. So break it down the slide into smaller chunks rather than putting all information, and it would be much easier for you to get started. Right. Also, when you build presentation, prefer to use some theme which is available into into your PowerPoint. So let's say if I have to build some tables or shape, so I would prefer that like I have to put some icons like this, and here you could see that there are some colors which are already part of the palette here. Now I try to keep a symmetry. Symmetry in the sense that anytime I have to display any first component, maybe I would use green for that. Second component would be blue. Third would be yellow. That one gold and then gray and then this and this. So that would give you a symmetry in whatever slides you are building. So if I start with this in one pattern and next slide it is in another pattern, it would confuse. But if I always keep these three colors to get started, first component, second and third, it would be easy for your people to relate, and it would make middle port symmetry for you to get started. So that is another tip which I prefer to follow. And palettes are there. Don't overcomplicate your life by picking up very specific colors and all. And even if you have to pick up specific colors, there is a color tool available. Like you could select that eyedropper and select a tool from here. So it would be giving you a little more symmetrical way to build your presentation, right? So that is another tool which I use. Obviously, Paint is a nice tool. Paint can help you a lot. So not a very complicated tool, a very rudimentary tool, and you do not have to install or buy licenses. Paint is available in most of the things. If you have to resize images or tilt them or rotate them, then this is a nice tool to get started. And sometimes if you have to fill some colors or remove some of the background, that is also there. PowerPoint also has a tool where you could remove background from resources. So let's say this is a picture and I want to remove a background from there. I should have no problem at all on that. And here is my option of remove background, and I should be able to remove background from there. You could obviously select what areas you want to keep and what areas you want to remove. So it would make your life much, much easier to get started. So a lot of tools already exist which you should be using. PowerPoint is, I feel, is the most powerful tool I have used so far, and I am still amazed by the quality and tools settings it offers. Like if you look about this BeSA logo, it looks very complicated graphics, but if I dissect it, you would be a little amazed. What I have here, it is just some lines, that's all. So if you look at this logo, it looks like that, hey, it looks like this is a very complicatedly created graphics. But if I go further in that and try to go ahead and its outline, let me go ahead. And so this is a shape, right? If this is a full shape, this is just a box. So I have just used this box, and this one here is just a line or arc which I have used, but I've combined them in a way that it feels like that is a graphics. And again, this one is a small component. Everything here is just boxes, no complicated Photoshop, nothing else. And we could just create logos like that, should not be a problem at all, right? So just use your creativity. And there are a lot of tools available, a lot of components available, which you should be able to use to create logos and create different components if the need be. Okay. Any question? Remove PG to remove image background. It works well. Thanks for sharing that, Parna. Means I was not aware. I preferred PowerPoint, but yeah, I'll give it a try. Thanks for sharing that. So hopefully this gives you a little more idea. So that was on the side of presentations which I built. And let's talk a little bit more on the delivery part. And Google search. Now, sometimes if you need an idea, don't search just the text part into Google. So let's say I want to talk about AWS containers. All right. So I'll again go to Google, very simple one. And I don't have to teach you that. But if I go ahead and AWS container, and don't restrict yourself only for the text, search for images. It would give you some idea about, hey, what can be else done. Sometimes pictures are worth easy to understand and better than lot of text. So probably you could find some interesting graphics and you can get started from there. Or maybe some more presentation link would be show up which you can use at your own presentation if you want to. So that can be a good way to search on the images. Even for the technical term, look for images and you should be able to get a lot of information there too. So that is another tip which I wanted to share. All right. So that is how I build my content. Next is coming to delivering content, that how I deliver these content to users. So I am using a lot of monitors here as of now. This was my setup which we captured in the last cycle. So what you see here, the first one is where I am seeing all the presenters, or this is the live view which you would be seeing. On the second screen, I am having my chat session, so I could see who is asking questions and I could go ahead and answer those questions. Screen 3, I am using a PowerPoint and I want to show that slideshow. So that slideshow is coming up here. And then screen 4 is my drawing tablet. I'll talk about more on that. And then 5 is where I join as a participant to see if users are seeing what I'm presenting or not. It is a good thing to check your own feed in case there is some issue, something you are sharing which is wrong, or people are not able to figure out. So better would be to have these. You don't have to overcomplicate your life like this, but at least two monitors. If you do regular presentation, two monitors would help. And you don't have to buy a fancy monitor. Repurpose your monitors, the old one, or maybe here you have your tablet which you could connect over Wi-Fi and then display content there. So that should not be a problem at all. Be cognizant of the time. So I have a timer here, if you see, and I am always checking that, hey, am I on time or not? So that's how I deliver. Now the tablet may look costly, but you don't have to go and that overcomplicate the life. I prefer to draw, and you could buy these type of tablet, which is, this is my previous tablet which I used to have. It was not a fancy one, but yeah, it was a good for purpose. I still use it. So you should be able to use tablets like this. Or if you need little more fancy, which I'm using right now, I prefer this Canvas 13. This one is a 13-inch tablet, easy to carry in case I have to use. And then it has buttons here. So these buttons can help me to select shortcut keys. So shortcut keys will help me to, I need a pen, or I need a graphic, or I need a box to create. So I could utilize that. So if you see this, I have put together like a poor man's way of putting the icons. So I have put stickers here, like this one will give me a pen, this one is for arrow, and this one is for my box. So this is what I have used a software here called Epic Pen, and through that Epic Pen I am leveraging drawing tools on the screen. Now this is paid one. There is a free version of also it available, and there are other software also which can do the similar stuff. I prefer this one because it has ability to draw things like a circle or this. So I don't have to manually select things here. I could press the button and automatically that particular thing. So like right now I have clicked on this button and box physically, and it has converted my cursor into this. So I don't have to like move my mouse every time to corner and then select a particular tool. I want to do text, so I would just get some text tool. I want to have a cursor back. I want to have an arrow used for my application. So that all can happen here. So that is much easier. So use that. That can be helpful if you do a lot of presentation online. Drawing keeps people engaged, and you, I prefer to draw things, whatever it is simple or complicated. Unless I can draw, I am not able to explain things easily. So I prefer drawing, and it gives you free hand. You could draw directly onto screen. You could draw it on a notepad or whatever you prefer. So don't be bogged down by tools. If you want to do it, even before I started using these tools, I used MS Paint, which is a good enough tool to get started with. You do not need all these fancy things unless you have a very professional way, very day-to-day things like I do. I deliver training every day, and that's why I prefer to use some tools. But if you're delivering presentation once in a while, then you do not need to have these fancy tools. And again, a tool is as good as a person using it. So even people with lot of fancy tool may have it but may not know how to use that. So then there is no point in that. Okay, any questions so far, anyone? Anything which I can help you before I go into technical track? If the laptop has only one HDMI port, what splitter work for the connect more than one monitor display? Will the config of the laptop support multiple display? Yes, that can happen. So could you please share the link to this tablet? I'll share that, Anton. No worries on that. I'll put on the resource page. So you should be able to get that. Or let me put these links here. Now, I'm not marketing them, but I like these products, and that's why I'm sharing that. But yeah, you can select similar product from different companies. There is no problem at all on that. Should not be issue at all on that. Now, if you are using one monitor only, then Parna, there are ways that you have like at least a USB-C port, and there are a lot of converters available which you could have used a USB-C port also to connect to. And even if not, you could go ahead and do a wireless connection on some of the screen. So like one of my TVs, I can connect to it wirelessly. I could project from here directly to the TV without even connecting any physical thing. So things like Anycast, Miracast, these software are there which could help you to even present to for locations where you do not have physical cable. But if these software are there called Anycast and Miracast, you should be able to use it. And Chromecast is also there. So any devices which are supporting Chrome, they should also be able to utilize these things. Should not be a problem at all. with laptop for drawing. How can I connect tablet with laptop for drawing? So it comes with different cable, Lakhan. It depends on which model of the tablet you have bought. Like if I'm talking about this one, this one comes with a set of cables by which I could connect to it. So this one has, I'm not sure if they have displayed the cable information here or not, but see, this type of cable is there. So it is just a USB-C cable. You would need a software to ensure that you are connecting right tablet and right connection settings. But yeah, it is not a complicated one. You just need a USB cable like this and you should be good to get started. Now if you need more graphical resolution and all, then there may be separate cables available for that. So like if I'm talking about Huon, there is a 3-in-1 cable also for that. So in case you do not have USB-C and you want to use a traditional approach of connecting your devices, so see this is one cable which will connect into your HDMI. One red one is for USB power and the black one is for the software connectivity, and this end would go into your tablet, and that's how you should be able to get your connection done. So it is not USB-C only. Lot of converters available, you could utilize them if the need be. If you want to go a little more fancy with like 4 monitor setup and all, then you could use IBM ThinkPad, what do you call it, video share, Lenovo, not this one. Let me get that through images. Come on, I forgot the name. Let me check. What is it called? It's a ThinkPad, which you could get. ThinkPad USB-C, a dock, something like this. So you could get a dock like this, which is this one, as you could see here, and that would give you like one input, and then you could have multiple output connected to it. Like here, this one has a USB-C in the front, but in the back of it, you would have option to connect more devices. Like here is a display port, here is a old type of VGA monitor port which you could connect to. So these devices are there. Again, don't spend a lot of money on them. Even if you buy second hand on eBay, it is much cheaper, 50-40 bucks, even 20-30 bucks. You could be able to get all these devices, should not be a problem. Like here, this one is ThinkPad is costly, but if you get it on eBay on a cheap price, why not use it? You do not have to like use a newer device for all these stuff, right? Any more questions, anyone? Any doubts? Anything which I can help you with? Okay, so we will now go ahead and talk about the technical track, and let's see what is there. I have picked up some of these requests which has came up on the LinkedIn. So we are going to talk about that. First one was a quick recap of IAM. It was from Swati. So I'll quickly recap what IAM is, and then we can talk to the next topic. And if you have any more topic and if we have time, put them into chat. And if I am knowing about that, I would be happy to talk about that. So IAM is providing two things to you, right? What are these two things? Let's talk about that. Can anyone tell me what two things are there? What two things can IAM provide you? First one, it provides you is authentication. And second, it provides you is authorization. That is the basic fundamental thing which IAM is providing you. Authentication basically is saying who you are, like verifying your own connectivity, verifying your own credential. That is called your authentication. Authorization is basically what can you do. Can you create a EC2? Can you perform these things? User management, exactly, pattern project, and that would be the part which will come here in authentication. And that would also cover some of the things on authorization, but IAM is providing you these two things. Now, how it provides this authentication, let's talk about that. So for providing authentication, you could create IAM users. You could create a user for yourself, myself, a admin, a QA into IAM itself, or you could connect it to a identity provider. What is an identity provider? A database of user in which user account already exists, and that could be Active Directory, could be LDAP, or anything else. So we support two identity provider here. SAML based are basically your AD, LDAP. These are all your SAML based identity provider. And then we have web identity provider, which we call web ID, and that could be your Facebook, Google, or anything, they will be considered as your web ID or web 2.0 providers. So IAM gives you authentication. Your user can come locally, or it can come from SAML, or can come from any other web identity provider, should not be from. Then comes authorization. So for authorization, what IAM gives you policies. So I'll talk about authentication option first, and then I'll talk about the policies which can be used for these services. We'll discuss that. But hopefully this thing is basic about IAM. Now, anything you do on AWS, it could be a simple API call, what you are making, a complicated one, nothing escapes IAM. Every request you send will be coming to IAM, and IAM will decide to allow that request or deny that request. So that always happens. And the same time, one more thing happens with your request is your cloud trail. So CloudTrail would record it whether it was allowed or denied. Everything would be recorded by CloudTrail. So these two things will always happen whenever you are making any API call. You may decide to make that API call from CLI, or from Management Console, or from SDK, or AWS service making a call to another AWS service. Everything has to go through IAM, right? Now, what can I do in IAM? Let's see that. So what I could do, I could create users here. Users would be for someone who are regularly logging into your account. A developer, a QA, a production engineer, a management engineer, they would always be logging into your AWS account, and that's why better to have user created. Now, you need to find a fine balance here. Let's say you have 1,000 people who would be interested to log into your AWS account. Now, can you create this user account in AWS IAM? Answer is yes, you could create it. But should I do it? Why? Because this then I have to maintain password for these 1,000 people. Chances are these people already have their account in Active Directory or in LDAP or some other resources. So better would be I do not recreate those account, but I just create a connection from IAM up to this identity source and get started from there. So that is what I could do. So I could create users here. I could create groups or resources here. Group is a logical representation of multiple user, dev, QA, production. Those will be all called groups, and groups would help you to manage permissions easily. You do not log in as a group, you belong to a group, but you log in as a user always. So you may be belonging to, let's say, solution architect team in your company, but you are still an independent user, right? So user would be belonging to a group or may exist independently. Another component in IAM we have is called role. Role is something what you assume. Role, you never log in, but you assume a role. An example which I share in my most training is like, let's say, let's talk about a actor or a actress. What actor and actresses do, they perform a role, they assume a role, right? Let me talk about one famous actor. So Jim Carrey, probably people have heard about him, right? He has performed different movies, different roles, right? How I can explain that? So let me start talking about that. So if you have seen the movie The Mask, what he did in that mask, he played a role of a green thing. He wears a mask and he becomes someone else. That is a role which he played, right? Then he played into another movie called Bruce Almighty. I know that these are all old movies, people may not be have seen them. Bruce Almighty, he plays a role of a god. Then another movie, S Ventura, in that he plays a role of a pet detective. So what is happening here? These are the personas that Jim Carrey is assuming. He would wear makeup and will become the green thing, will become God, will become pet detective, but he or she is still the same person. So what they are doing, they are assuming a role, complete their work, and then come back to Jim Carrey again or become Jim Carrey again. So roles are good if you have a temporary or a cross account user need. So that time we would be utilizing a role. So as I said, you always assume a role, you do not log in, and at a time you can assume only one role. Roles are represented by hat. So that hat is something which you could wear on your head. So I become, let's say I'm going to a construction site, I would be wearing a hard hat to protect myself from injury. I'm going to skiing, I would be wearing a winter hat to protect myself. I'm going into summer, I would be wearing a summer cap on my head. So at a time, I could assume only one role. Once I assume a role, I become someone else, perform the task, and I return back to what I was. So roles plays a pretty important thing in what you go ahead and see that. Right. So these are roles. Now, how to give permission? So permissions come from policies. So once you have created a role or a user or a group, you may associate policies with them. Policies are nothing but JSON document, and these JSON document would allow you to define things like here is a policy which says S3 allow, EC2 allow, RDS deny. So I would have allow and deny statement in them with additional setting to give permissions to the user group or role. So these are called policies. Now, policies can be associated to a role. Policies can be associated to group or a resource. I'll talk about that. And policies can be associated to a user. So this is how the communication between all four component is. You could have a user. A user can belong to a group, right? That is possible. Policy can be attached to user directly or to group or to a role. Then a role can be assumed by a user. I would log in as Ashish and then I would say I want to become a QA admin or production admin, and then I would assume a role. So what a user can do, user can assume a role. So that's what I could do. Now, a role can also be assumed by other AWS services. Like you have seen, EC2 has instance profile, Lambda has a role, Glue Crawler has a role, then you deploy a container, it may have a role. So resources can also assume a role, and once they assume a role, it empowers them, it gives them permission to perform something, and maybe in this case, we have allowed them to access another AWS resource from one resource. So now my EC2 can collect logs here or can send data into S3 or just read file from S3. So that is all possible. You could go ahead and do that. So your roles can be assumed by users or it could be assumed by your resources, like here EC2 assuming a role and performing action. Right. Another thing, policies can also be attached to a resource that is little unique. Like, what is this? This is a resource policy. So in your house, you may have a cupboard. On that cupboard, you have a lock. Maybe you have something valuable inside or something very personal which you don't want to be seen by everyone. So what you would do, you would probably put it into a lock. So that time the resource is inside, and on the resource itself you have put a lock. So policy is protecting that resource, and a policy can be associated to the resource. That is also possible. So policy has multiple ways where I could associate them. Shouldn't be a problem at all. Any questions so far? Anything which is not clear? Okay, now little bit further. Now I won't take a lot of time here because it's a very lengthy discussion, but I'll at least give you an idea what policies are, and then probably if you have any further question you could come back, should not be an issue. So policies, I would divide them into IAM and resource policies. Now people may debate it, that's completely understandable. Someone may call it differently, but this is my understanding, and that is what I prefer to understand it, like how my policies are. I may have a IAM policy or I may have a resource policy. IAM policy can be inline, can be managed, and then managed policy can be managed by AWS, or managed policy can be done by myself, which is my customer managed policy. So these are the common policy things which are there. Now, some people say that inline policy and resource policies are same. Probably they are in the function, but to understand them, I want to keep them as separate as possible. So here what you see is IAM policy, inline and managed, and there is a resource policy. Let's talk about managed policy first. These are standalone policies which you create. These policies you have to do for two things. First, you have to do is create these policies. Once you have created, the next thing you would do would be to attach these policy. Unless you attach it, it is of no use. You could attach to a user, you could attach to a group, you could attach to a role, to any entity you could attach these policies. These are called my managed policy. And for common function, AWS gives you some policies which you do not have to create, they exist by default. And you could have a customer managed policy also, which I could create on my own if the need be. So you create these policies and associate with a user, group, or role. That is called my managed policy. Customer managed and AWS managed, there is a difference between them. Then inline, which are embedded within the principle itself, which cannot be further reused. You just create a policy, attach it to your user, that's all, or a group or a role, but you cannot further reuse it because its scope is only with that. It is only in the line of that resource, nothing beyond it. So that is an inline policy. So that we could use. And then you can have your resource policy. So some AWS resources like S3 bucket, VPC endpoint, they support this type of resource policies, KMS keys, API gateway. So let's say you have created a KMS key. In the key itself, I could attach a policy, and in that I could say who would have access to that. So resource policy are not dependent on IAM, even if you have no IAM access. But if we have given you policy access here, you would be able to access those resources. Those exist for some resource like S3, VPC, KMS key, API gateway, and Lambda function. Right. So these are called IAM and resource policy. Okay. So to summarize, IAM support identity. You could associate multiple identity sources. Policy simulator is there, which you could use to troubleshoot. Prefer role for temporary access. Policy evaluation logic is simple. For every API call, all policies are combined. If there is a matching deny statement, your decision is denied. If there is a allow statement, then your decision is allowed. And if nothing is there, then you would still be denied because that is how implicit deny is. Now, in our first batch of BeSA, first cycle, I have talked about these things in much detail, so I can send that link, or you could search on the YouTube channel and you would find a IAM session where I have discussed these in much detail. So if you have more questions, check that. If you still have doubt, feel free to reach out. Okay. Any questions on IAM, anything which is not clear? Good. Happy to help, Swati. No issues at all. Okay. Moving on, the next request is from Parna is about understanding different tools, storage gateway, data sync, transfer family, and how to use it. Let me explain that why we need it. I am more interested into why we need a tool, and then we can see how it works. So let me talk about why we need tools like storage gateway. Let me try to give you an idea on how things work into on-prem and how things work into AWS cloud. Now, some of you may not have a lot of on-prem experience, so let me try to draw these things for you. On-prem, you would obviously have lots of servers. These are servers are physical or virtual, doesn't matter. And obviously, a very common thing you would need is to perform backup, right? Everything has to have a backup. So probably what you would have a backup server. Backup server, when I'm saying, that means the software which is running on this server. So this is my backup software running here, and that backup software through some agent or some API would capture data from these servers and then store this data for long term retention. Now obviously what I have to do, I have to provide some storage to this backup server. Unless storage is there where the data would be stored, so what I need some storage here. Okay, what I'm explaining you right now is about AWS storage gateway. Why I need it, I'll explain that first and we'll see how it is done afterwards. So this is what an on-prem environment looks like. On your left side you have a backup software, and that backup software would be storing data into some storage. Now, how to provide the storage? There are multiple ways to provide storage to your on-prem environment. A common one which we have, not sure if a lot of people know about it, is through SAN, storage area network. Or it could be local disk on the server itself. So I may have a local disk, I may have a SAN, and I could present these local disk or SAN as a storage to the backup software or backup server who would start storing data there. That is one option. Second option is I could provide storage from some file servers. File servers are your NFS share, which are hosted on your on-prem server. Lot of hardware is available which you could use for that, and that can also present storage to your backup software. Or the third way, which is little old fashioned but still there in some organization, is to provide a tape library. And through that tape library, your software would be able to access then store data into tape. So these are the three ways by which I could present storage to backup software. And the challenge here is that that software which I'm using here may not understand cloud. Why? Because it understand common protocols here, like it uses iSCSI to access my storage here. So that could be happening here. Maybe file storage is accessed over NFS or SMB file share. So that is what I have to provide. And then tape is mostly is called VTL, virtual tape library. So the challenge is that I want to move this data to cloud, but my backup software is not smart enough to understand cloud-based services. In cloud, the best service to store my data would be Amazon S3 and Glacier and EBS volumes, right? These would be the best services to keep my data for long term, but my backup software doesn't understand this. So what I have to do now, I have to create a channel so that backup software can leverage S3 Glacier or EBS, and that's where storage gateway comes into picture. There are two components for storage gateway. Let me explain that. One is called storage gateway service, right? So this service is running on AWS. It accepts the connection. It has an endpoint where you will talk to. And then what we deploy on the on-prem side, we deploy a storage gateway software. This software can be installed on a virtual machine. It can be installed on a physical machine. It should have Linux, Windows, or supported operating system. I think Linux only. So physical machine, or you could buy a hardware and that software can be installed there. What this software would start doing, this software would still require a storage. So we may have given it some way of storage. However, we provide the storage, whatever methods we use, and what it would start doing, it would start presenting itself to the backup software and say, hey, backup software, you speak which languages? You speak iSCSI, you speak NFS, SMB. I speak all these languages. So just send data to me and I would take care of that, whatever you have. So all the common languages backup software is speaking NFS and then your SMB and VTL. This storage gateway software on on-prem, it mimics or it pretends that it knows about these languages. Technically, what will it will be doing, it would be taking the request from this backup software and then would forward these requests to the storage gateway service, and that gateway service would store the data into Amazon S3. So backup software thinks I am talking to a person who speaks my language and I can access it anytime I want. I do not have to modify anything. And at the back end, we are having a better protection for our data, which is being stored into Amazon S3. So that is what a storage gateway is. So it emulates, it simulate, or it performs, or it virtually present a iSCSI, NFS, or VTL share, and through this it is able to send data to the backend services, which is my storage gateway as a service. So that is the main idea of storage gateway, right? So obviously this channel which is created is secure. It is all encrypted. Data isn't being stored. Why people use that? Because if you come from backup industry, they follow 3-2-1 rule. Little old school, but still very relevant. 3-2-1 rule says for backup that keep 3 copies of your data on 2 different media and at least 1 copy offsite away from your physical location. So if you look at now, we have 3 copies of our data. The storage gateway here can have a local copy also. It can keep cached data here if the need be, or you could just do all transfer here, keep a copy here. So we have 3 copies of data, 2 different media, at least 1 copy offsite. So we are better protected. Even if something goes wrong, I would be able to recover my data much faster. So that's what is a storage gateway. So the front end of storage gateway is these, and the back end is S3 Glacier or EBS volumes. Okay. Any questions here? Any doubts? Any confusions on this? Okay. So hopefully this thing is clear that what is a storage gateway. I'll talk about other services now, which is data sync and transfer family. The name itself tells about what this service will do. It will sync your data. We need to have a direct connect between on-prem cloud or storage gateway to work. Not direct connect, it could be any connectivity. It could be VPN, it could be direct connect Pawan, or it could be public. You do not need to have a connection which is only direct connect. Let me explain that. So let's say this is your AWS. Here is my storage gateway service. So this service has a public endpoint. You would create a VM here, or you would create a storage gateway software here. You need to just provide a way for this software to reach to this public endpoint. Now, you would be utilizing this through internet. That is one way. Again, tunnel is secured, or you may use a direct connect. It is your decision. You may put it on VPN or internet directly or direct connect. You need to have a VM exposed. VPN would be preferred way if it is not having direct connect. If it is a huge traffic, then there would be direct connect which you would be needing. Right. So that's how not direct connect is always required. You could run it on a VPN. Problem you need to just sort out the network connectivity and you are all good. That's all we need. Okay. Question from Parna, is the storage gateway software provided by AWS? Yes, we do that. Let me explain that. You could go ahead and deploy these things into multiple format. Let me explain that. So I log into console and let me quickly navigate to storage gateway. So I'm going to storage gateway. So hybrid storage solution. Caching can be done. So it can keep some data into cache and remaining into on-prem should not be a problem. So you select what you want. Volume gateway, which is iSCSI, FSX, file share or gateway. So I say, let's say I want a volume gateway. Done. All right. So let's create a volume gateway here. So select which gateway you want to mount it to. I do not have a gateway deployed as of now. So let me first deploy a gateway. Here, I would be asked that what name I want to provide and what I want to achieve. Let's call it storage gateway 01. And I would select that what I have planned to use it for S3, FSX, tape or volume. So let's say I want to use it as a volume gateway. Okay, see this. Again, volume has a different type, cached and storage, and here is my platform option. So what we are seeing here that this is my ESXi Hyper-V Linux Amazon EC2. So if I select ESXi, I would be downloading a software OVF template which can be directly deployed on AWS. So that what I could use. Or if I feel no, I have a Microsoft Hyper-V running on-prem, I want an image which I can deploy there. So we could download that. Or I am just using Linux KVM, I could deploy. Or if you do not have any hypervisor at all at on-prem, what you could say, hey, I would use a EC2, and that EC2 would be created with the AMI in which storage gateway software is already installed. So yes, the software is provided by AWS. There are multiple ways to host it, either on VMware, Microsoft Linux, or Amazon EC2, or you could buy a hardware appliance. We ship a hardware to you. If you need it, you could buy that hardware, and in that hardware, the software would be installed for you. So you could get a hardware gateway appliance also if the need be. So that software has to be installed, provided by AWS, and you decide where you would keep this on your environment, whether on-prem or cloud or on physical or on virtual machine. So this is like a server given to you with storage gateway software installed on that. Okay. Any questions here? There is a question about how much time it requires to deploy Direct Connect. Prasad has answered it, but I would say it depends, because what happens that you raise a request and that request goes to a partner. then partner would find out that what is the last mile connectivity to your location, and then it may take little time or may not take time depending on what network infrastructure is already in place. So I would say from AWS side, you could raise a request, and depending on your physical location, the time could vary because you have to work with a partner who would put the line up to your physical network. Okay, all right. Any question on storage gateway before I move forward and talk about data sync? Now, data sync has a use case for syncing data. So let's say I have created lot of files here, or I have a file storage on-prem. I have a lot of software here who are storing data into file storage, right? Now, my intention is that I want to create a copy of this and not only do the initial copy, but also keep data into sync, right? I have two files here right now. On the first time, an initial copy would happen, and here this share could be an NFS share, could be a CIFS or SMB share, which I am using, and I want to have a similar EFS volume created here, or I want to utilize a S3 bucket for keeping my copy. So again, the concept is same. I would require a data sync software to be installed. Again, it is a software, agent as we call it. So this agent would be installed as a virtual machine. It would be connecting to your file storage, and then over network would transfer your data to EFS or transfer it to S3. That is my data sync service. Right. So data sync is keeping them into sync. You add third file here, it will automatically come here. Fourth file here, it will automatically come here. So that is the concept of data sync. So if you have a requirement, you want to keep your on-prem and cloud in data store into similar way, you want to automatically continuously replicate data whatever changes happen, so that time I would be using this, because this one will only perform change based data transfer. It won't transfer everything every time. It would first do initial transfer, and later it would only do transfer of what has actually been changed into your environment. So that is my data sync. So here is a data sync. Simplify, automate, and accelerate moving of your data, right? So what I'll do here, I would select data sync automation. What are my use case? I want to transfer from on-prem to AWS or between AWS. That is also possible. Right. So I may select between on-prem storage and this, and I could get started. Now here again, see this, I would need a platform where this software would be installed, ESXi or Hyper-V or EC2, where this software would be installed. I would connect it to an endpoint and I would activate it. Once activated, I would get a connection, I would get a key and install it on my environment, right? So that is what data sync is. Now, question from Pawan is, when do you storage gateway data sync or snowball? Let me explain those concepts. Good question. Right, give me a minute. I'll talk about that. So let's first talk about storage gateway. So you would use storage gateway if you need a SAN volume. SAN, when I'm saying it is iSCSI, right? When you want to cache data on-prem, that time it is better. So first thing is SAN volume is needed. I need to have a cache created. Maybe I want to replicate my tape libraries. So that time I would be utilizing that. So storage gateway is a good solution for SAN, for caching, and for tape, right? This is what we can do with this. This one is good when we do DR. DR in the sense, I have my disaster recovery, I have everything available here. I copied it here, and if servers fail into my on-prem, I want to have the data available. I would deploy a EC2. My data would be restored here. So maybe I have taken a backup here from a backup software. That backup is stored into cloud. If things fail physically, I would deploy a EC2, restore my backup there, and I am again back up and running. So this one is more a disaster recovery, or you could call it a hybrid solution when you need to have storage in both location on-prem as well as cloud. That time storage gateway is a good solution, right? Data sync, on the other hand, is not having any cache. There is no cache maintained. So you have your source, that one is your data sync agent. It would read this data and copy it to AWS. And this can also work if your source is into on-prem, or even if it is into a AWS or other cloud also. So no problem at all on that. You just install this software on other cloud, or maybe just onto on-prem or on AWS service. On AWS, you do not need to install software, but for other places, software is needed. And then it would keep your data into sync, but there is no cache here. So most of the time, if you have a regular data transfer happening, that time data sync is a good choice for you. Regular data transfer, that time data sync is better, right? Third thing is Snowball. Snowball has a very specific use case. Snowball is good when you have a physical data transfer need. Either you have too much data, or you have very small size network connection which cannot carry all the data, or you have a legal compliance that you can't send data over network, you have to physically transport it. That time you would use Snowball. So let's say you are into a cruise ship which won't have like a gbps of internet connectivity. That time, on this cruise ship, maybe I could collect all the data into Snowball, and when this cruise ship docks, that Snowball can be sent to AWS, so all my machinery data of the engine and devices would be captured and analyzed. Or I am running an event into desert where there is no internet connectivity, I still collect the data on Snowball and ship it back. So whenever a physical data transport need required, either because of volume or because of compliance or because of network speed, that time you would use Snowball devices. Does it make sense? Right. So these are the ways where I would use different things. Is Outpost also used for transporting data? That correct understanding answer is no. Outpost is not for transportation. Outpost is an installation thing. What you would do, let's say you are a hospital. Just give an example. Now, you store your patient data, and patient data is being stored onto AWS, let's assume. Obviously, you would need a network connectivity. What if this network connectivity is gone? You still need some data, maybe because of some legal issues, compliance, or security. You want your data physically be stored in your hospital data center only. So think about two things. One is a control plane. Control plane is when you say you go to console and say, hey, I want to launch a EC2 machine. So you go to a console, select the required AMI, and an instance is created for you. So that instruction you sent is a control plane. That EC2 instance would still run on a hardware, right? It would start transferring data using that hardware. That is called your data plane. So data plane is where the actual launching of instance data transfer is happening. And in case of AWS Outpost, what we give you a physical server, either one server or a rack of server which are capable of running services like EC2. It can run RDS, it can run S3 bucket on that. So the now, in your AWS environment, you would start seeing one more subnet which would be belonging to this physical Outpost device. It's a physical server. You won't be shipping it back and forth because it's a huge device. So that would be an outpost which you would use for uh, on-prem presence of AWS. So data plane would reside at your location, whereas control plane would still be on AWS. So you are launching the script, you would just target it to your outpost, and you should have no problem in accessing that physical location from your environment. So that is called outpost. So outpost is a physical server. It is not designed for transportation. You just request it. A server can be in form of this one or two rack, one U or two U, or it could be a full rack which you could request. AWS would ship it to you, get it installed, connect it to your environment, and that's all you need for outpost. So this is a physical outpost which you would deploy. So it is not for transportation, but to keep copy of your data locally and run your workload locally. That's why outpost is used. All right, clear? Hopefully, Pawan has a question. So data sync is good for DR backup also. Is that correct understanding? You can use it, Pawan, no problem at all on that. Yes, you can. No issues at all on that. So idea is like, hey, if let's see an example here. Let's say you have a backup software, and that backup software stores your backup into a folder in your environment. You want one more copy of that. So what I could do, I could go ahead and use a data sync job here, and it would create one more copy of that for me into my AWS environment. So that can be done, no problem at all on that. So yes, it can be used. Some services would be competing with each other. There would be multiple component which have similar component and similar ways of thing, but it depends on what your use case is. Storage gateway is more elaborate in the sense it can give you multiple type of connectivity, whereas data sync has specific type of connections only which can work. Okay, any more questions, any doubts, any confusions? Good. All right, so coming to the last discussion point is called transfer family. Let's see what this transfer family is. Now, most of the time we use a web browser. A web browser is a good tool to access HTTP page, Java application and all, and it works on HTTP. But if you have to do a lot of data transfer, then this one is not a good choice. HTTP came very late to be existing. Before data transfer was happening for a common protocol which is called FTP, file transfer protocol. Still very commonly used, but it is still available, but not everyone may be using it as of now. FTP, file transfer protocol. The concept of FTP is simple. You would have a client, you would install this client. Most of the operating system have this FTP client built in. So if you go to Windows and run your command prompt and run for FTP, you would probably see a FTP client is already installed on your Windows machine. See this. So I got to FTP prompt. So this is a client. Now what this client, what I would do, I would go ahead and say open, and I would give a server name. What it would do, it would create a connection to the server, and then I could start copying that. So the concept is pretty simple. With FTP, what we do, we set up a client which would create a data, and then that would be somebody would set up a FTP server, and then these two devices would talk on FTP protocol. Okay, so that's a good thing. So probably I have created an on-prem application, and that on-prem application wants to talk to a storage in FTP terms. Fine, no issues, we could go ahead and do that. But what customers used to do, they would take a EC2 machine, have a Linux based operating system or Windows based operating system, and then install a FTP server software on that. So one EC2 machine, it may have elastic IP, it may have a private IP with other connectivity, but this would give you an endpoint where you would point your client and your client would start sending data to this. But be aware it is one EC2 machine, right? So it would have its limitation in terms of performance, availability, operating system maintenance, patching, update. So that's why if customer has 100 file to transfer, maybe one server is sufficient. You have 10,000 files to transfer, one server won't be sufficient. So customers have to maintain high availability, auto scaling of that, patching, and all the stuff. So AWS said, hey, don't go with that path. We will help you in solving this problem. What we will give you, we would give you a managed SFTP server or FTP server. What you need an endpoint. We will give you an endpoint. You just point your client software to that endpoint. And we would take care of installing the operating system, installing configuration, or making sure that it is patched, it is secure and all. We would take care of everything for you. So that is called my SFTP. So transfer family, it is basically a way when I want to use the same protocol I was using SFTP, FTP, These are the common protocol which customers use for file transfer on a traditional on-prem environment. So if your application doesn't know HTTP, doesn't know what is S3 is, old school, it just understand FTP protocol, let it speak FTP, and we would forward that request to endpoint. I would just do not need to modify anything in application. I would just change its endpoint. Currently it was pointing to a local endpoint. Now I would point it to a AWS endpoint and my request would be fulfilled. So I do not have to modify my application in this case. So that would be my SFTP type of services. So that is the third one, which is called my transfer family. Right. So if you go to transfer family, you should be able to see and select that what kind of server you need. So if I go back to here, SFTP transfer family fully managed for SFTP, FTPS, and FTP. These are the common protocol. And once I get started, again, I would be getting an endpoint created. So let's say I want to create a server. What protocol I want to support, let's say SFTP. I would provide the service name, right? I would provide, is it public accessible or not, or is it in VPC? Let's say public hosted. Where my data would go actually, where the storage would happen on S3 or EFS. So let's say I say S3, then I would obviously need a role for communication. I could need a key. I could create workflow that, okay, once data comes in, what next? What I have to do? Do I have to zip it? Do I have to analyze it? Do I have to delete it? Do I have to obfuscate the personal information? And what my banner would look like on my FTP server? And then I would just create a server. So that would give me an endpoint. This is my endpoint getting ready. And then I could add local users on that so that my user can perform a login and get access to that. So I would go ahead and perform a username and password based login, and afterward I would have connectivity to my server. So it would be ready in few minutes, and then I should be able to get an endpoint. So here it would come as identity a provider. See, this is my endpoint. I would point my SFTP service here. That's all. Okay, so these are the three type of services which you could have used for data transfer. Again, it depends what your use case is, why you would use it, and what can be the benefit or challenges with every service. So depending on your use case, you would select any of them. Any questions, any doubts, any confusions here? Okay, all right. So we already covered a lot of time and taken a lot of time. So I'll quickly talk about the last one here, transit gateway. And if some of you want to drop off, feel free. I know it has been late, but yeah, if you want to stick along, feel free. Otherwise, drop off and you can watch the recording later. So Pawan wanted to talk about transit gateway. So let me quickly talk about what transit gateway is and why we would use these services. Okay, probably people know about transit gateway. Can anyone tell me why I would use it? Why you would use transit gateway? What is the benefit of using transit gateway as a service? Why somebody would be interested to pay extra money to have a transit gateway? Which are the user here? Connect CPC in a region, connect VPCs in a region, simplify networking. Yes, that is exactly. Parna, I didn't get your question. Which are the users here? I have no idea on that. What you are asking? Maybe you have to rephrase it. Simplify networking as exactly Mendix. So that is the main thing, right? So transit gateway. Think about a transit flight. I'll give you minimizes the VPC peering exactly. So I'll give you an example. Now let's talk about any airlines. Airlines work on this model which they call hub and spoke. Every airline has a hub. Most I would say. Like if I'm talking about British Airways has their hub into London Heathrow. If I'm talking about Emirates have their hub into Dubai. If I'm talking about Lufthansa, they may have their hub into Berlin or Munich. What these airlines do, so let's say this is like a bad representation of UK. In UK, there are different cities. People are living in Cardiff, Manchester, Leeds, Essex, and then maybe into Southend on the sea. And obviously, they can't operate flight from all the places. So what they would do, if somebody from, let's say, from Cardiff wants to go to New York, There would be no direct flight from Cardiff to New York. What they would do, they would collect all people from different places into London Heathrow, and from there they would maintain a flight to New York. So this is a transit place. Or if you are talking about different continent travel, let's say you are into Southeast Asia, let's say you are into, let's say, J- Indonesia, Java, and you want to travel to New York, maybe there is no direct flight. So what you have to do, maybe you have to first come to Singapore. From Singapore, maybe you will get to Dubai, and from Dubai you will get a flight. So what these airports are, these are your transit airport. Exact same thing is what transit gateway is allowing you to do. It is allowing you to provide a central connectivity for multiple VPC. Before that, what we used to have, we would be connecting peering connections like this. And over a period of time, your life will become very complicated. So what we did now, we said, hey, let's solve this problem. How we solve this problem, that we would go ahead and have these VPC connected to a central entity, which will be my transit gateway. And through this transit gateway, I would allow all the communication to flow around. That's how I would communicate with that. One thing about transit gateway, it is a regional entity, so it exists into one region only, right? Then it can have up to 5,000 VPCs or VPN or DX connected. So it is not only for your regional VPCs. What you may have your VPN connection coming up, you may have your direct connect coming up, you may have your VPC 1 2 3. They can also come up here, so they all can communicate with your transit gateway. What transit gateway works with? Transit gateway works with something called an attachment. So this is a technical term. When you create a transit gateway, it would be created, and then you will create an attachment, and then attachment would allow you to connect to a VPN, VPC, or direct connect, and that's how you would be connecting your multiple network. Apart from that, transit gateways maintain their own routing table. So it may happen that, let's say, physically A, B, C, D, E, F all are physically connected to transit gateway, but I could create here a table, and in that table I could restrict. So that is my routing table 1, and it is only having entry for A and E. So only A and E can talk, and I could have another routing table here, which is for B and D and no one else. So that is possible. A transit gateway can have multiple attachment, and it can have multiple routing table to ensure connectivity to different aspect. I'll quickly show it into a console, and you would be able to relate to. So concept is, you create a transit gateway, you create attachment to transit gateway, and then you create routing table entries so your resources can communicate from one network to another network. That's what the main idea of transit gateway is. So see this. Here I have a transit gateway in region 1, which is having connectivity to all these things. My direct connect, VPCs, VPC, site to site VPN, everything can connect here. And then I may have another region where another transit gateway exists, and I should be able to communicate across them too. I could peer transit gateways also in case I want to. So that is still now possible. You could do that. Is the data transfer free? Swati, answer is no, you pay charges. So you pay charges till the transit gateway is connected, and then data transfer charges will also be there. So you pay money on that. That's why it may not be for everyone. Unless you have a use case where you need to solve multiple connectivity issues, probably it would be a costly service. So be aware about that. Right. So it is costly service. You have to pay money for every attachment you create. So I'll go to VPC, and in that VPC, I would create a transit gateway. Let's go to VPC here. And here I have options for transit gateway. I could select a transit gateway. So see this, first thing I would do is to create a TGW. Without saying anything, I just say, hey, I want to create a TGW, TGW01. I could select, hey, I want to use default route table. If you select this option, it would mean everyone can talk to everyone. right? So it will mean everyone can talk to everyone. If I don't want that, I would say I don't want this, so I would remove that. So now I have to explicitly create my route table. So first thing I'm doing here is I'm creating a transit gateway. Once this transit gateway gets ready, next would be to associate attachments with that, and that would be created here in the console. If you see here, transit gateway, and here is my transit gateway attachment. All right, what I could do here, I could go ahead and say I want to create an attachment. What I want to call it, let's say I call it VPCA attachment. Right, I would select a transit gateway, whatever I have, and see this. To what I could connect it to a VPC, to a VPN, to a peering connection, which will be another VPC, or it could be a direct connect also. So these are the four type of connection which can come to a transit gateway once it is operational. So let it be ready in a minute, and then we would see that how it would work. Once you create that, you would have a network interface created on that, right? So what do you do that you would be able to create a network interface by which communication will happen. So if I see my example here, I have some VPCs here. I have an outbound VPC. I have VPC-A, VPC-B, VPC-C, and a default VPC in my account. And if I want, I could pair all of them together with the transit gateway, which I am just creating. So it may take little time to get ready. And now I could go ahead and say attach. Okay, let's create an attachment. I want to connect it to VPC-A attachment. I would select my transit gateway and select VPC attachment. And now I would select which VPC. So I want to connect it to my VPCA. See this. What transit gateway would do, it would establish a network connection into at least one of the subnet of that VPC. So it would consume a IP. It would open a gate on the subnet. So traffic coming to it could be forwarded to it. So I could select it. And once I'm ready, I would say create an attachment. So this attachment is like a egress point or ingress point for your network. And once this is ready, I may want to now create a routing table. So let's go ahead and see routing table here. So see this transit gateway route tables. I could go ahead and create a new routing table here. Let's call it for VPCA only. And I would associate it with my transit gateway. Done. And in that, I would be then creating entries for that. So I would associate it with my one of the attachment, right? So once it is ready, I would then create in as a association, like you create a route table and associate it. Similarly, once your transit gateway route table is ready, you would then associate with any of the attachment. So see this, I have this attachment created. If you see this VPCA attachment, I would associate it, and whatever entry I put into that, I would be able to then access this. So I could say here, hey, what I want, yes, everything which is coming from you, if it wants to go external, what I should do, I should forward it to a specific entry here. So I'm creating a static route, and I would say everything should be forwarded to this particular attachment. I would call it active. So I would say anything comes in to go outside, please forward it to transit gateway. So I'm not attaching IGW here. What design I plan to do here, let me explain that here on whiteboard. So I may have my multiple VPCs, VPC A, B, and C. Here I have my transit gateway, and here I could have anyone call external or shared services. I could attach my IGW only here and say to all these VPC, hey, you just forward your request to this transit gateway, and based on this, transit gateway would forward your request here, and then you would get access to internet. So that could be one way of designing a solution. And if I feel, I could put restriction that, hey, A and B, you should not be talking to each other because you are isolated workload. I want to block traffic from you to you here. So that can still happen. They both are physically connected to the same transit gateway, but through routing table I could prevent communication happening between them. So that is all possible. And here maybe I put my net gateway as a service, maybe I put my active directory here, maybe I put a firewall solution, intrusion detection system. So everything would funnel through my transit gateway and then be forwarded to external world. So if you do monitoring, you have to do monitoring here only. You do not have to manually take care of monitoring in every individual VPC. So that can help you in taking operational burden away from you. So that is the main idea of transit gateway. Okay, what are direct connect gateway? They can be connected to transit gateway too, right? Yeah, that's the only thing. Yes, that can connect. I'll talk about extension to Pawan question. Any VPC limitation, transit gateway use case as it is expensive service. I would say it depends, Swati. I would say like if it is 4 or 5 servers which VPC you are connecting, probably you are good with that to do a VPC peering. But if you feel that you have lot of servers to communicate to, sorry, lot of VPCs to communicate to, that time transit gateway would be better. Or for solution like you want all your data to go through a central place and then only it should be forwarded to internet, then probably transit gateway is a good use case. Or you have dynamic environment where your developer deploy a lot of VPCs on the fly, delete it, remove it, attach it, that time transit gateway can also be useful, right? VPC limitation is 5,000. So 5,000 is the VPC you could create on a transit gateway which you could attach. And then see, one TGW can have up to 5,000. And if you pair with another TGW, you would again have 5,000. Now, I don't think that you would need that kind of scalability, but technically it is still possible. You could still use it because if you do this, you would have a very lengthy routing table and it can be not something you should take into consideration. Okay. Uh, Parna has a question. What are direct connect gateways? Let me quickly talk about direct connect gateways. Give me a minute. Right. So when you order a direct connect, you connect it to a specific AWS region. Right. So direct connect is basically giving you connectivity to a one single AWS region from your on-prem environment. And here you would be connecting it to a VPC technically. So your connection would be like this. A VPC is connected through your direct connect gateway. Now, what if my on-prem, let's say it was talking to Ireland as a region, and now it has also to talk to London as a region, and it has also to talk to Northern Virginia as a region. One option is I could order another direct connect, obviously very costly affair, but technically possible. You could do that. Or I could say, let me go ahead and create a different architecture. Let me try to draw that architecture for you, and we can then see how the connectivity would look like. So we could say, hey, I would connect you to a DX gateway here. What I'm doing, I am connecting it to a DX gateway. So physically, I am connected to a DX gateway. And that DX gateway allows me to communicate to whole global network of AWS. So even if I am connecting to second region or third region or fifth region or 10th region, no problem at all. DX gateway allows you to create a multi-region architecture with one DX connection rather than having one-to-one connection to every region, which can be very costly and a management overhead for long run. So we want to avoid it, and that's where we would be creating a DX gateway. All right. Any questions, any doubts, any confusion? Is TGW peering free? I doubt it. I doubt it because then you are using global network, right, Swati? Because what is happening that your data is moving from one region to another region, and that is where there is a charge on data transfer fees will come into picture because there is a boundary you are crossing from network perspective. So there would be cost on that. So I don't think peering is free. Connection would be free, maybe to connect it, but once the data transfer happens, you would start paying fees for that. All right. Any last questions? Anything which we can help you with? All right. So that was too much, I would say, for a lot of things we covered here, but hopefully you have got a little better idea on how all these things work together. And if you have anything, then we would be starting next session into the next one. We would discuss that. Deepa, it would take a little more time. So REST API is a little longer discussion. It is not like one single thing which we could do, but probably when we get time, we would be able to take it. And what you could do, you could send this information into our LinkedIn group, and we should be able to compile a list of the projects we want to do or add like what else we want to associate to talk about. So that should be all easy, right? So we could plan for that. And sorry to keep you waiting, Prasad. It's been long discussion, but yeah, hopefully people have got better understanding.
It's always a learning for me, Ashish, listening to you. I learned a lot. Yeah, being a specialist workload, for specific Microsoft workloads, I don't get to work
Yeah,
on all the AWS services. But when I listen to you, I'm like,
exactly.
it gets refreshed. So thank you so
That's
much.
nice.
I
Thank
always use
you.
this opportunity to upskill myself.
Guys, good. What else? Questions here. Thanks for all the topics. Amazing session. There was a question: how much portion of the ML and Lambda cover in SA C03 exam? I would say check Ramkrishnan that exam guide. ML is not too much. Expect, I would say, like 5 to 10% of topics, probably even not that much. One or two
Yeah.
question if you could expect on ML, I would be okay. And again, not every question is weighted. So some beta questions are there in exam. So you may be asked a question which they are preparing to be actually into exam, and that's why it may not be marked. So even if you wrongly answer that, still chances are you would be able to pass that without any issue. So ML is very small portion of SA03. Lambda is everywhere. I agree on that, Pavan. Yeah, Lambda is everywhere. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you, everyone. And we appreciate you still sticking with us at this time of the year and this time of the day. It's very late for a lot of you, I think, in India, but I appreciate and your support, what keeps us motivated. And we are planning more sessions in coming February, probably January, February timeframe. And obviously, we need feedback. We need suggestions because collectively we are 4 or 5 people. We can do what we could think of. But if we get suggestion from 100 people, then obviously we could improve things and we can address what else can be there to help you out in your journey. All right. Now,
Yeah.
Swati says long wait. I agree on that. We need some time to refresh and then collect some thoughts and be ready with the program. We just don't want to launch something where people won't get value. So that's why we need some preparation time. But yeah, in between, if you have any question, feel free to reach out. We are happy to help. All
So
right.
this year we have been able to run two batches for BeSA, and both the batches were 12 weeks long, like 8 sessions for technical and 4 sessions for uh, behavioral track. The plan is similar, that we will be
Yeah,
running it in the next quarter. But yeah, we need some time to regroup and then think about how to add more value, and that's where the feedback, as I said, from you all would be really helpful. We're pretty happy, frankly, with the kind of progress we have been able to make. We have some really good success stories: people joining AWS, people joining Microsoft, people getting certifications, people getting better at their jobs. So very happy with that, but definitely there are a few things that we can improve. We recognize that,
exactly.
and we want to actually like take stock of that and improve and scale it even further.
Yeah. And any feedback, any suggestions, send it us to us. We are happy to handle that, and we want to improve this. If you want to be part, you have any ideas you want to present, you want to have a mock interview, or you have built something you want to share with others, you have written a blog post you want to share, let us know and we can see how it can be facilitated. So no problem at all on that. Okay,
And let's this build this community as a BESA where we
exactly.
help each other. uh, uh, yeah.
Good.
Cool.
So
So
thank you,
happy
everyone.
holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays. Yeah, exactly. And we will see in New Year. So hope New Year would bring you a lot more things for keeping you challenged in the case of like learning new things and getting to new job offers or exploring more domains. So all the best and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.